It was still, peaceful, and washed clean of the lies of day. Who among you, with your heads now perched so firmly into the grasp of your pillows, who claim to be conscious of the soul of this land, with your thoughts on the dreams of tomorrow, nurtured by the falsehoods you sing to yourselves, that a medicine choked down to take your next breaths? This rain, this shower of dreary pulpit water spewed from the heavens, probably the wash from angelic outhouses. Oh, how you slumber. Wake up. Wake up. Wake up. His room was cold. Sleep wrestled his eyes shut while the weight of country winter urged him to pull his blankets tighter to his body. The young boy buried his face into his pillow, yawning and smacking his lips as he struggled to wake himself. The pale light of the morning stole his gaze as the world came into focus from his hazy vision. He noticed the fog laid down over the backyard, and the way it seemed to meld the yard and the forest together. He watched the condensation collect at the top of the windowsill and form into a quivering drop as it raced to the bottom. It was here, in the sliver of cleared window, that the young boy caught sight of a shadow peering back at him from the curtain of trees about 30 yards out. It looked tall. The shadow was lanky and seemed to be seconds from falling over into the mud. It would have been easy for him to mistake this shadow for a sapling tree, or some bit of darkness between those trees. The only thing that pulled his eyes to the figure was the pale glow of floating orbs of light floating in the shadows around it. The boy raised his head from the comfort of his pillow. He froze there, studying every piece of this shadow he could see. He studied it. He watched it and followed its movements as if he were trying to define some newfound creature. As his focus was held, captured at this strange thing, an obnoxious noise began to creep into his ears. What began as what seemed like a whisper from some old and broken radio turned smoothly and abruptly into a stabbing static that invaded his hearing as a sudden weight fell over him, consuming him as the darkness of the room grew deeper. "Aston, let's get up, sweetie," called his mother's voice from the other side of the door as she gently knocked. "Breakfast is already on the table." The boy snapped out of his trance. The whining stopped and the darkness in his peripheral vision cleared. He studied the room around him. His eyes darted from corner to corner as he tried to find something close and out of place. He remembered the thing in the woods and snapped his focus back to find the pyre-helmed shade. There was nothing. He froze there for a moment. His head tilted to the side and he lurched forward to place his hands against the glass to study the forest closer. His breath began to fog the window and his eyes caught the sight of something on the other side of the glass. There, in the middle of the top of the window, was a handprint. Aston stood up in his bed to examine it. His nose touched the glass and his eyes followed the curves of the handprint before he jumped away from the bed and towards the door, before bolting out into the hall. "Mom, Mom," he cried out. "There's a hand. There's a hand on my window." He raced through the halls and found himself barely stopping short of running into the kitchen table. His mom stood at the stove, pushing the last pancake on a stack onto a plate. He tapped his palms nervously against the tabletop and began to call his mom over and over, his wide eyes and chattering mouth, full of gaps from missing baby teeth, insisted on his mother's attention. She huffed with a large smile on her face and directed him to sit down. "There's a hand on my window, Mom," he yelled. He ran over to her and pulled at her dress before grabbing her hand and leading her back through the hall to his room. His little hands pointed over towards the window and directed his mother's eyes to the window drenched in morning dew. "There's nothing there," she quickly groaned, after straining her eyes into a soft squint. "What am I supposed to be looking at?" Aston clicked his tongue and darted over to jump up onto his bed as he pushed his hands against the glass to study where he remembered the handprint to be. "And there you go, touching all over the glass yourself," his mother called out from the doorway before retreating back down the hall. "Come eat your breakfast. We have to get going soon." "But Mom," Ashton droned on, "there was a handprint, I swear." "You don't swear anything," she quipped quickly. Her tone hardened and grounded her son's mood. "Don't make me tell you again. Come on." He heard her tapping against the walls of the halls, leading back into the kitchen, and finally pulling a chair out from the kitchen table before pausing. Aston waited there in his disappointment. He plopped down onto his bed before throwing himself out of the room and back to the kitchen table. "I even made your favorite this morning. You hadn't even said thank you yet." His mother was smiling now. He returned her smile and grabbed the syrup bottle, turning it upside down and drenching his plate of 2 pancakes in a sweet flood. "Not so much," he heard his mom warn. "Your food's gonna float away." Both of them giggled before turning their attention to their food. Silence fell over the table. Only the occasional sound of utensils scraping ceramic plates or the creaking of Aston's chair as he swung his legs disrupted the quiet. He caught glances of his mother in between bites. Her eyes looked tired as they watched her plate and danced around the table. Aston kept watching her until she looked up at him, her eyes gaining more life as she began to talk. "Are you done eating?" she said softly as she lowered her own fork to reach out to him. "Did you sleep well?" Aston's eyes lit up with excitement. He smiled big and his head nodded quickly in confirmation. He looked at his plate and took one more bite before jumping up from the table to rush back to his room. His mother's voice screeched out into the halls. "Get ready for school, Munchkin. We don't need you late for the bus."